Go. Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is creating unity through music, or as I like to say, making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And today I am in Studio 1 of the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society. And our guest is, I guess, like 3,000 miles away. I think he's in Oregon. I'm not 100% sure. That's where you are. A good friend met at Wooten Woods, Mr. Lyric Hartley. How you doing, Lyric?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon.
On
Yeah.
the whole other side of the coast. We
Yeah.
can run in opposite directions and fall in the water, probably.
That's right. We don't want to do that right now anyway. It's cold water. Anyway, we were both at Victor Wooten's Theory of Music camp last September 2018, and also at the Spirit of Music camp, which is a whole different thing than the Theory of Music camp, and way unbelievable. Just had a great time with you there and everybody else, and meeting the whole family there.
For sure.
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing short of life-changing, I would say.
That's all. Just life-changing.
Yeah, just, there's other stuff, and then there's the life-changing, and that one's that. It's spot on that.
Yep. And I will say, Lyric is a great name for a person being interviewed on a podcast about music.
Well, I appreciate it. I've noticed it was popular with little girls, I think, like 6 years ago, because the only other lyrics I've met are about 6-year-old girls. So I'm not sure what was in the water 6 years ago that made a bunch of people name their kids Lyric, but that's for whatever reason I've met like 4 of them. Wow.
Well, I'll keep my ears out, or eyes peeled for more lyrics, and I'll report back.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're from Oregon. I forget in our conversations, but where are you from? And was there music in your household growing up? Did you start playing lessons early, late? What instruments did you pick up? How did music kind of come into your life?
Yeah. So I'm from lower Alabama, near Mobile, Alabama. Kind of grew up all around Alabama. I've only been in Oregon for like around 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
But music was very much so a part of our world. And a few reasons. I think a lot of it was from the church. I grew up in church,
right?
Lots and lots and lots of church, and
lots and lots and lots of church.
I don't think they offered any more church I don't think there was any more that we didn't partake of that was available. We exhausted all the church resources. But I have to think that part of what got it in my brain was I was raised Church of Christ, and I'm sure that different Church of Christ groups have different things, but ours didn't sort of believe in instrumental music. So all the services were a cappella, and so you pulled out your hymnal and you started looking, and not like any of us knew how to read music. I'm sure that there was music there that somebody could read, but the words were kind of staggered in a way that you could kind of figure out that the people who were singing higher were singing that line, and deeper people were singing this line. And so you'd spend your time trying to figure out which line you were supposed to be singing, and then hop in. And I absolutely loved it. Once a month we would have these things they called song service, where there was it was all singing the whole service. There was no other sermon or anything.
It's very cool, really.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, I wish I had tapes from that stuff.
Yeah. And how old were you? At what age range?
This was from birth to high school, till out of high school.
Wow.
So my mom was a single mom, and I think in many ways leveraged the church to help with some of the babysitting, which I think is how me and my brother ended up there a lot. But for good reason, and I think we got a lot of great things out of it. But I can't help but think that that's where I started to get an ear for it, because you could, it was kind of like the being thrown in the water, and having to swim, because nobody told you what part to sing. I just all of a sudden everybody started belting out stuff, and you had to figure out, like, am I the in the or am I the and you just kind of navigate it. And then as your voice changes, you navigate to a different part of it. There was no choir. There was no separation, right? There was no, like, there's people on the stage and then there's people in the crowd. And that carried out into, family in general, because we would have what we called Pickins, where family would get together, and in those cases with instruments, and people from the church, maybe the song leader or some other people. And, one of the song leaders was an amazing banjo player. And I can remember being a kid and sitting, on the floor and just looking up. I was probably about as close as you could get without making him uncomfortable. And I would just sit there and watch, him playing banjo. And I could probably draw that banjo if I had to.
Wow.
And then on the other side was my uncle, who, was always making things. So he made a washtub bass that had, he had made frets, and he would wear a glove, and he put a resounder on it, so it'd be really loud. Doonch, 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 doonch. Like, and he could really get down on that thing. And there was kind of an expectation that when there was a Pickin, whether that was Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever, or a Sunday, there was an expectation that you were involved somehow. You didn't get to walk off. You might, if you didn't want to do anything else, you might get handed a pair of spoons and shown the basics of spoons, and say, go for it.
You couldn't just sing, even though the church stuff was just singing.
Right. It was just singing at church. Now, you could there, if you didn't want to play anything, then you could sing. Or if you didn't want to sing, then you get stuck doing something.
But you
had
had
on your leg. That's all you got.
You had to participate making music.
Yes.
At these Pickins.
Yes. Yeah. You definitely. Yeah, you did. I think, and I don't want to expand this out too far ahead of time, but I kind of feel that's something that makes me sad that we've lost. Like, now the family is kind of spread, and and you'll see that various kids of various cousins are playing music in their little area, but there's not a Pickin anymore, because we don't live in a mass like we used to.
Yeah. And when you said, so it's sad that we've lost it, I kind of was thinking, the whole human family.
Yeah.
Not just your family, but that's a cool, background in your family. I certainly didn't have that. It sounds really neat. When did you pick up an instrument? What instrument was that? Or was it many instruments?
No, well, it changed. I still feel like I'm trying to figure out where my voice is. I still have no idea. But I mean, I see pictures of me with one when I was little. But I think I was just goofing around. Like, I don't remember learning anything.
With what instrument? Did I miss that?
With a guitar.
With a guitar, yeah.
With like an acoustic guitar. Like, I've seen pictures of me sitting with an acoustic guitar.
When you were like how old, you think?
Probably 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I guess. But not doing anything. I was probably, I think at that time I spent more time just watching, watching people play. And I think that's what got burned into me, was just how connected. I mean, to kind of say, like you were saying in the whole intro, that connection, it was a deep connection that people formed. And they were singing with their heart. And, so yeah, but then as far as actually playing, I kept begging for a guitar, in, I guess, middle school. And I got one for Christmas. And I remember my mom, instead of wrapping things that were very big, she just put them in garbage bags. And I remember going in on Christmas morning and seeing these garbage bags under the tree and being like, oh, I think that one might be a guitar. And so I opened it up, and I don't know where this thing came from. But you could probably put your whole arm between the fretboard and the strings. The action was so terrible. Some of the strings were rusting, like they were all corroded, even at that. So it clearly wasn't new. It came from somewhere. I'm sure it was the cheapest thing. And so I remember attempting to play that thing, which in hindsight was like, of course that would kill any motivation. Your
Right.
fingers are cut and bloody, and you can't keep it in tune. You don't even know what it means for it to be in tune. And so it kind of fell away. But I still had that interest, and always listened to tons of music. And then in high school, I started trying to find a guitar, and I found one at this pawn shop. And so I put it on layaway, and every time I'd come in, I'd give my $20 or whatever for that week, and they'd let me sit there on the counter and mess around with it for a little bit. And then they'd take it back and stick it in the back, and I'd come back in a week and give them $20 more, and I'd sit there felt like I was renting it. It was like a rent to own. And then eventually I bought it. And so was playing then. So in high school, and I think in high school it was kind of a way to get through high school.
Sort of playing by yourself, making stuff up, listening to records, that kind of thing. Did you get into bands? Where did this trajectory then take you? Have you been playing in bands? I mean,
No. Well, so shortly after that, I didn't have any instruments until a few years ago.
Huh.
And I had moved around, like I sold everything I owned several times. Moved to India a couple of times. And
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so I just started pursuing other things. Actually, what I was pursuing was spirituality. This is where they tie together. I was pursuing all variations of spirituality that I could get my hands on. And
like Hinduism, and I mean, it
was less Hinduism. I would say more Buddhism, and I mean, of course, it was meditation. I was a grass dancer with the Cherokee, so I would dance at powwows.
Wow!
Because the dance was a form of prayer, and that was appealing because that felt like where I came from. I tried to get really into Christianity and what I could find, but I felt like there was more that I needed from it. And so that kind of led me through, dancing in powwows to, eventually I studied for a while at the Dalai Lama's temple in Dharamshala. And so no music at all during all those times. Huh. And other than listening, I can't escape it. I can't help it. I mean, I have to listen every day. And so then where I started picking up a guitar again was I was on the bus. I had moved to Portland, and I remember I was on the bus. I was coming back from work in downtown Portland, and found out that my cousin had died in his sleep. One of the ones who was at those Pickins all the time, right? Huh. And he was 40 years old, and which is kind of a theme in my family. We don't live long. And so I was like, okay, well I can't put this off. So I literally got off the bus. I walked into the nearest guitar shop. I bought an acoustic guitar for what, I wanted something less than $200. Paid $180 for it. The one you played, actually.
Oh yeah, that one at Wooten's Woods. I really like that guitar.
I do too. It's odd. I mean, I paid like $182 for it.
It had so much feel and action, and it was so sweet.
Yeah, I like it. And yeah, so I picked up that and a 6-pack of beer and walked on home and decided to not let this go by. And so then that sort of got me back into it. Then I came across a banjo on Craigslist that was all messed up. And so got it for cheap and tried to figure out how to get it cleaned back up and functional, and found that I really liked banjo. It felt very natural to me. It was banjo is, I mean, it's fairly easy to sound way better than you are. Like,
well, that's a good thing. That's a plus.
Yeah, so it's rewarding. It's very rewarding. It feels like you're doing more than you are. But then I found it wasn't as versatile, as I wanted. You can't get some deeper stuff out of a banjo, I guess, unless you're Bela and you get one of those bass banjos or whatever. But that kind of led me. And then I was like, well, I'm having a hard time. I traveled for work, and I was like, these are really hard to bring around. So I bought a mandolin thinking it would be more convenient. Mm-hmm. I was like, maybe convenience is my hurdle. And so then I would tote around the mandolin and found that it was a whole different animal. And so it was its own. It was a lot of fun, but I was like, okay, this is probably not going to be. This isn't going to be the one. Like, I don't think this is the one calling my name.
Right.
And so I've kind of hovered back around guitar.
But you've been playing guitar now for 10 years or something, and
I mean, there's some other life conditions that have made it such that it's been on and off. I wouldn't say I've been putting as much time into it, except over the past 3 years is when I started putting more.
Yeah. So then, how did you? Well, I have two things I really kind of want to ask. One is, putting the spirituality and the music together, but this may even tie in. Why did you decide to go to Victor Wooten's camp? And were those two things related?
Definitely, especially that spirit of music. So when I started wanting to get further into it, I started thinking about what. So I kind of have this, and this is in all areas. I try to think about, well, if I'm trying to learn about X, Y, Z, then I try to figure out who seems to really know and understand that, and then figure out what they have to say. Mm-hmm. And so I'll tend to go look for their books or whatever. For a while, I had a long commute, so I just burned through audiobooks. Burned through tons of them. Burned through the whole Bible twice too, just because I'd exhausted everything else they had.
Holy
this was
smokes.
When you got tape. But at any rate, so in looking through that stuff, I came across Victor's book and the music lesson, and so I went through that twice and was like, "This is awesome! Like, this is actually all. This ties together the sort of meditation stuff that I've been kind of pursuing. It ties together the natural stuff that I've been exploring, because I enjoy being out in the woods, and then this different way of thinking about music.
I agree.
That resonates more for me. I think you probably feel the same.
Yep.
And so I was so after going through that, I was actually digging around on YouTube, looking at various videos of how to play this or that and the other. And I came across the one of Victor at NAMM, and he started talking about the sort of the theory is easy. Actually, because I was trying to learn some theory. Because I was like, okay, nobody in my family knows theory. Nobody knows how to read music. Nobody, it's just not a thing. And I was like, it seems like maybe I should learn it. Like otherwise, I'm going to be cowboy chords forever.
Yeah.
Which no problem there. People have had amazing, like a lot of music that has fully influenced me. It's just cowboy chords. But I also, like things like the Grateful Dead and Fish and Herbie Hancock or whatever, some more complicated. And of course, Victor and Bela and Flecktones. And so anyway, so that video came up in that search, and it was Victor doing the, theory doesn't have to be hard. It's just basic math, or whatever. And I was like, this is interesting. And then the part that stuck out is he said, I learned this part at my camp. And I was like, say what? You have a camp? And then I was just hunting down the internet to try to find where this camp was and what it took to get in. What did I have? I figured I had to do some kind of,
test.
I had to qualify for it. Yeah. Like, okay, what do I need to do? I'm getting to this camp. And then when I realized, no, I didn't have to, and it wasn't actually ridiculously expensive like I would have imagined, or for the value you get. I mean, I guess it's priceless at some level.
Right.
You get way more than the monetary cost. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to this, no doubt about it. And so bought my literally right after that video, Google search, find it. There's one coming up, bought. And that was it.
Well, cool. And so, in a sense, you were talking about the power of music in your life. It certainly was a big thing in your family. It really bound your family together. Then you were talking about the spirituality. Now you're talking about how they sort of come together. Victor has the music and nature camp and those sorts of things. So, I mean, what is your thinking about what that power of music is? Why did you grab the banjo? I mean, the guitar that time. What really, what's underneath of, being drawn to Victor's camp and having been there? What's your sort of mindset? What are you thinking about now?
I went through a couple of things. At the camp, I definitely had where I'm like, okay, I'm not qualified to be here. The site said,
the crippling self-doubt that musicians get, that sort of thing.
Right. What is it? Conscious incompetence.
Right.
At some level, when you're unconscious and incompetent, it doesn't matter. You just have fun. And then when you become very conscious of it, it becomes harder. And because of the people I like to hear play, I'm like, I don't know that I'll ever get there. I don't know how I'll ever get to that level.
I hear you.
And it blows me away. And so during some of the first part of the camp, I was like, not only was I not sure the guitar was even the thing that was where my voice was supposed to be, it was just the thing I had a case for that I could bring. I was like, wow, I'm not even decent enough with this thing. I mean, maybe I don't know what I need to find. And so, I mean, I was about ready to just, throw it out the window.
Chuck it in a bucket.
Yeah, exactly. Just, it's got to be, I could use it for cracking walnuts or something. There's got to be some other part.
Right.
And Victor said, he said, well, you don't choose music, it chooses you. You can't not do it. Like if you're here, it's because you can't help it. It's because music has chosen you. And so I was kind of, thinking on that, and it was right before I went to bed, and I was laying there in our, quarters there.
Luxurious.
Yeah, right.
Cots and
on my cot, trying not to wake everybody up if I move. But and I was laying there, and I was thinking about it because I've had that same thought about spirituality at several times. I've been like, I wish I wish this thing would leave me alone, because I've sold off all my crap and moved all over the planet. My life would be so much easier if this thing would leave me alone. And, but it won't. And then when Victor said that, I was like, that's true. That's very true. And music won't either. I can't go through a day without listening to music. And it's just like it tunes me. And
it tunes you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good way to think of it.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, I think of it even like that and down to a physics level. I think that whatever vibrations I have going on, when they get out of whack and sound like your guitar that's out of tune, like, then you can listen to the right song and and get right back.
Come right into tune.
Yeah, it'll line back up. And so as I was laying there, I thought, well, I can't help but think that the fact that both of these things won't leave me alone, that maybe they're the same thing. That maybe the same things I was learning in India about meditation and how, as I say, as prana, that sort of life force, how that thing moves, it's a similar thing to, a live, music situation, and how, that stuff's getting like, there's this thing they call pranayama, like the gift of life force. And in many ways, I think that's what's going on in a live performance, and it's not one direction. It's a cycle between the listeners and the players. And in the same way in meditation too, it's a cycle. And in fact, that's part of the reason in India they ask the ladies to sit on one side and the men on another, is because the energy is different enough that it makes the cycle move faster or more effectively, I guess.
Wow.
It's not a chauvinistic thing. In some cases, maybe it is if they don't understand. So they started to look like the same thing, like two sides of the same thing.
Yeah, well, music or whatever that, as some people say, the being or the entity or the spirit of music that plays you is kind of like that pranayama, kind of like that life force, or the chi, something like that.
Yeah, that. Well, and I think, like you said in the intro about how, how I could heal the planet. If you kind of step back from a, kind of a physics level, and think about it in that sense, I guess back to like the being out of tune, right? I mean, you can imagine just imagine the planet on a whole as being like an E chord or something. And you shave off enough forest that now you've disrupted enough vibration to have some not quite a diminished thing, but still kind of out of tune or whatever. Yeah. And if you create enough dissonance, the things fall apart.
One could certainly say the planet, or at least is a little bit out of tune. A lot of it caused by humans and maybe not playing enough music.
I would agree with that. I think, kind of along those lines, like I've mentioned, even with my family. And I think part of it is when we got TV and, internet and everything, and disclaimer, I work for tech, so I'm definitely in that world, whether I want to be or not. But it took us away from those kind of connections. We weren't forced into them, if that's maybe a bad way to put it. But, if you didn't have, if you imagine if all of us go out camping, well, all of a sudden people break out instruments and do round table stories. They do all sorts of things that have them interacting and learning and growing. But if you could just each go into your own room and watch Netflix, then you do.
Right. Right. So with what you've sort of
and there's nothing.
Oh, sorry. Let's just start over from there. There was a little blurp in the thing.
Yeah.
I'll just edit out a few things. So from what you've, your current thought place is, having been to Wooten Woods, all this years of spirituality, the music, and we're also in this little book group, Nanada Brahma book group of some Spirit of Music camp people, and talking about what does this mean? The whole universe was created from sound. The world is sound. How do you have other thoughts just about what that means, and what can we as individual folks kind of do to maybe, to use your terminology, help get the planet a little bit back in tune?
I guess imagine like a tuning fork. Imagine all these folks are tuning forks all around the planet. And since we all have that sort of sympathetic resonance, that there's that part of us that will resonate in tune with that thing. And if you have enough of those, then they can create that sympathetic resonance all across the whole planet. And I feel like that's when you can, I guess that even holds with the analogy of tuning it, right?
Yeah.
If you think of those tuning forks everywhere, then all those things will resonate with each other, and then you'll get the thing in tune. And I don't know. And I think there's probably some arguments you could make there, even from the sort of physics levels of what those disturbances look like. I think it's unfortunate, as much as I like things like Wi-Fi and stuff, I think they create disruptions in those things, those exchanges, in the same way that if you imagine like a swimming pool, it being like the whole substance those vibrations move around in, and you throw a rock in, you get a ripple, and you throw another rock. But then if you start shooting bullets through, right, then you get these other weird cross ripples that will start to create a lot of turbulence in the water. And I can't help but think there's a similar thing that happens.
Yeah, that sounds right. I really like this analogy of, humans as tuning forks, because we clearly are vibrational, made of vibration, and we can get out of tune. And if there's a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of tuning forks, all, sending out, all kinds of crazy dissonant tunings, it's weird. Now, that doesn't make any of it bad from, I guess, the universe's perspective, but there is a preference for, consonance as opposed to dissonance.
I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the key thing, right? I mean, whether we like it or not, it could be that the common tuning isn't the one that we may have thought we preferred, but it may be the one that the planet needs, because it's doing its own, sending its own thing back. I don't know, but
I like the thought of, well, what can we do? We can try to get ourselves in tune and try to talk with other people and play music with other people so that more and more people get in tune, because there's not much more powerful than some beautiful tunage, if you will.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it goes, it extends way further. I mean, just like when Reggie was talking about,
Reggie Wooten, that Wooten Woods.
Yeah, talking about the power that musicians have, and and gave several analogies about the raise your hands in the air versus the cop saying raise your hands in the air,
right?
Or after Martin Luther King and James Brown talking to people. If music was something that was not critical for us, we would have evolved our way out of it. Like it wouldn't have hung on.
Right.
And even if everybody doesn't play it, it's hard to find somebody who doesn't listen to it or enjoy some version of it.
For sure.
Even if not the same one you like, you never find the person, or rarely find the person. Actually, I can't say you never. I think I've never encountered anyone who just hates it. Just like, I hate all forms of music, all of it. Don't like it.
Right. And people like all different types of music, and some of it, I mean, I've just never been into heavy metal, and some of that, I'm not a big opera kind of a guy, but that doesn't matter. But, you know, again, if it's clashing in a way that leads to violence, you know, other issues, mistreatment of people, mistreatment of animals, mistreatment of the planet, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I actually wondered about that, like why people do like different types of music. And to me, it seems like there's a few possible reasons, but one that I was just thinking about was, like, I mean, I used to think that, why is that person really into that death metal? And I like my own fair share of death metal too, if I'm in the right mood. But I keep thinking, like, well, I think it's a heart rate, and maybe it's dietary. Like maybe they're just going dun, and they're tuning themselves, and that's how they're acclimating, right? Or maybe it's going the other direction, and they need that to bring them back into the right frame of mind. Whatever it is, I think they are. It's self-medicating, right? In some form. And I think the thing that you just reminded me of, with, if you imagine again the planet of all these little tuning forks doing their own thing, is in the same way that an instrument, the sound you hear is comprised of several other tones that you may not hear, or may not be very perceptible, but you know, there are hundreds of them. And so there's a place for all of it. You know, you may not hear that tone, but it doesn't mean it's not part of your favorite chord. Right. And I think that's, you know, maybe that's part of seeing the differences or something. I don't know. That's a bit of a derail, but that's what made me think.
And Victor talks about, you know, everyone has different fingerprints, but we all have our own, I guess, sort of musical fingerprints in terms of the type of music we like. Maybe there aren't that many people who like exactly the same kind of music. But I do think, and so I appreciate, you know, the conversation. I think it's a pretty profound and interesting concept. Oh, there goes my bird clock. About the, you know, sort of the analogy of humans and tuning forks, and
whistling at you.
Yeah, it's got its own tune. It is kind of an interesting way to because some of this is also, how should we think about things? What's the way to think about things that's kind of the most conducive to peace, or most conducive to people being able to live their passions and do their passions and you know, live in the world in a very, you know, a good way and a very satisfying way. So I think this conversation right here, I mean, we had some good conversations at Wooten Woods, and I'm happy that we're able to continue this, and it really, I think you've given us something to think about. So, Lyric, thanks very much for taking the time to chat about this. I really, really appreciate it. And
I'm glad to. I think it's fun. Thanks for the ideas.
Yeah, and we'll keep, you know, for anybody out there listening, grab a hold of that Nada Brahma book and see if you can make any sense out of it. It's very, very
for sure.
Cool.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, Lyric Hartley, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot.
You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.